Hello, everybody. Hope everyone is doing well. Hope you enjoyed the intro music as always. I see some people shouting in the chat. Oh my god. Why is the chat doubling up? Oh, I know why. At least I think I do. Are these? There we go. Okay. That should be better. Damn, Date. You must be very excited to get in, just shouting that you're 18 years old and you want to become an environment artist. Any advice? Well, I mean, a very basic advice, but get started doing art and yeah, just take it day by day, get better over time, get into starting with like smaller props first and then build yourself up until you can do bigger and bigger scenes. What it kind of comes down to. There's like a million steps in between, but that's basically it. What it comes down to. It's a marathon if you want to get in. Gonna take a little bit of time. Hello, Bulborb. Hello, Snowbat. Hello, Bodhi, Francesco, Maria, Sheila. Lovely to see you all. Hope you're all doing well. As you can see, I went through a little bit of a change. we were cutting my hair, and then it was getting pretty short already. So it got to a point where we were just like, you know, let's just get it over with, you know. Times are coming for me, so it's about time to change up my look. Yeah, so that's what we're rocking with here. Getting used to no hair anymore. Hello, been a while since I took part in Whip Wednesday. Hello, Justin. Good to see you. Hello, Rextola. Good to see you too. Hope you're both doing well. Sorry, I'm still organizing stuff in the background here. But yeah, other than that, what has been going on this week? Let me think. What has been happening? Oh, yeah. One of the biggest things that has been happening is the signups for the team challenges are open. And wow. Pretty overwhelmed with like how many people signed up already, which is freaking awesome. So thank you all so much for signing up in such big numbers. It's gonna be crazy to see. This team challenge is definitely like the biggest one that we're gonna have, like by far. Currently, to give you like a rough estimate, we have double the amount of people that signed up compared to the previous one. So that's gonna be fucking massive. But that doesn't mean that like all those people are gonna get in, right? Because we still have to do like our selection process and all that kind of stuff. But it does give a good indication of like how big this team challenge is gonna be, which is nuts. So yeah, we're gonna close the signups tomorrow at 8. So you still have like roughly 1 day to sign up, and then after which, we're going to start the selection process. We're going to go through like all the people that signed up. And then, yeah, what was the next step? Like next step would be the kickoff, which is going to be on Saturday. So at 8, exclusive to our Discord. So all the people that signed up, hopefully we get all of them in time. And then we do like a kickoff stream that is going to be exclusive to Discord. It's going to be a lot of fun. So it's going to be like a little bit of a chaos this week, just trying to get everything in order, trying to get everything organized. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Wow, that's a lot. Yeah, I know. Any ideas why it's so much bigger this time? I mean, mainly because we are a bit better at like marketing it ourselves as well. And I also feel that it's been a long time since we've done the previous one too. So I think because of that, a lot of people just waiting for it to happen. Maybe the time kind of has something as well. Like the timing of it has something to do with it. But I'm honestly not sure on the timing. Because it kind of feels like, if you think about it, like most of the uni is like kicking off right now, right? Is it? Yeah, September, right? Oh my god, feels like ages since I've been to uni myself. But yeah, maybe the timing has something to do with it as well. I don't know. It's a good question, Carolina. Yeah, I think it's definitely the marketing and like also the wait that we had since it was the last one, right? Because the last one we had in February, and normally we try to do like 3 a year. We were doing like 4 a year at some point, but then we decided to go down to 3 a year. Which maybe, I don't know, maybe we can change it up again. That would be awesome. The kickoff will be recorded. The kickoff will not be recorded. So yeah, the kickoff basically serves as like an introduction to like the team challenges. We will take you through some of like the high level details. We will also reveal like all the teams. So we will go through like combining like all the teams in the next couple of days. Well, basically from tomorrow on. And then after which we'll do like the kickoff. But yeah, the kickoff will not be recorded. We may change that. I'm not sure about that yet. I'll discuss that with the team because we do have a lot of people that are in like distant time zones. So being able to watch live in the middle of the night is going to be tricky. But to give you like a high level sense of what we want to achieve with the kickoff is that we have everyone there, or like the majority of people there, and then we break off into like separate rooms, and that's when the challenge like actually begins, right? So usually it's the kickoff, which we try to keep like pretty short and contained, then after which we just go immediately into like the pre-production phase of the team challenge. So yeah, it's all kicking off then. Lyoli, thank you so much for subscribing. Appreciate it. Or for the follow, I should say. It's on Twitch, right? United OCC. Hey, what can you say about SPy? I know that SPy is a program to match like an image, like camera basis, right? So it allows you to take an image, like kind of draw lines where like a perspective is, and then it will kind of let you like do like a camera match. I've never used it. I don't think it's necessary. Yeah, that's basically all I know about it. Hello, Joe. How's it going? Yeah, it's been going good. Been going good. Gonna be a busy week with all the stuff that's going on, but I'm excited for it. It's gonna be awesome. Oh, and then also, I finally gone through like the whole book. So the book is now, well, I shouldn't say that. I got through like the first part of the editing process for the book. So I'll see if I can show it off actually. But, whoa. Does it allow me to do it? So as you can see, right there, that's like the complete book. Complete book, just outlined, and like all the little post-it notes that you see hanging around. That's like stuff that I need to change. And basically every single page kind of has like a bunch of notes that I just added on top of it. To give you an idea. That is what a single page looks like, right? So it has like a bunch of notes. Oh. A whole bunch of notes on there, and then basically for the next step I need to go through and actually apply those notes as well. So yeah, we're not out of the woods yet, but I'm so happy that this first step is done though. It's so nice. Oh my god. Nice. Yeah. It's been a while in the making. Oh. And it's going to be a while still, but hey, we're slowly making progress, and that's all that counts. Hello, Scott. How you doing, buddy? Oh, you look fresh? Yeah. Yeah, like I was saying in the beginning of the stream, I was my hair was getting like longer, so I wanted to cut it down. And then after just cutting it down just a little bit, I was like, yeah, I think it's time for it to let go, you know? So we just decided to just like completely let go of everything. Which is a change. I look like a hairy egg at the moment, but hey, we'll get used to that. It's a giant egg. But hey, we're gonna get through this. Let's see, Kovalinsky. Hi, in a scene with a lot of props, if some of them will be made using the low poly workflow and others using mid poly workflow, would it hurt the scene in the end? Mid poly workflow looks easier and faster to me. You can have a combination of the two. It kind of just depends on how you combine the two. Right, because if you're doing mid poly workflow, you can do a lot with a mid poly workflow if you have all the things that you need to make whatever you want, right? So you could make like really elaborate things with a mid poly workflow. So at that point, if you're using the mid poly workflow, I would kind of question like, why don't you do everything mid poly instead? But like I said, it depends on the scene, right? Hello, Adam. Hello, Guillaume. Got a bunch of people here today. It's always lovely to see so many people. So first of all, thanks for being here. Keep asking those questions if you want to. And what this basically is about, like this little stream that I do on like a weekly basis, is I'm just gonna go and check through all like the work in progress stuff that people have been working on from our community. And I'm basically just gonna go through, give a little feedback, and then hopefully help them along the way. I think we got 16 people today, so it's going to be pretty busy, which is cool. So I appreciate all of you posting. And yeah. So if you see me looking over to my screen, I'm just looking at like what people have posted and what they want help with. Right. Oh, and if you want to become a member yourself, the link is in the description down below as well. But for now, let's switch on over. Let's do this first. Where's my affinity? Hey, thank you so much for the sub, Gustav. Where's my affinity? Oh, there it is. Pink. There we go. There we go. Start at the front. Oh, another thing that has happened is that we also released our latest workshop that we had with Javier Perez. And that is now available for all of our members on your dashboard as well. So if you are a workshop member, that is now available on your dashboard, and go check it out. Plus, we also resolved the bug where the previous one kind of disappeared. That is also back. So appreciate bringing that up. Okay. Let's have a look. Let's get our pen going first. There we go. Cool. Let's dive into our menu for today. So the first environment on the list is from Will. Let's do it differently though. I kind of want to start at the back and then go to the front. So I'm kind of going to have to see. So that means that Eloy is going to go first. Right. Let's see. So Eloy is working on a retro cyber deck. This time I would like some feedback on the prop that has been abandoned for quite some time. I put it aside because I was not feeling it and I cannot figure out what to do to improve it. It feels like the shape are off, but I can't point it out. So there's a couple of things in comparison to the concept that we can already see. Is that the first thing that stands out to me is we're working with different proportions over here. So you can kind of see that like your little, what is it called? A cyber deck is taller than what the original concept is like. And it kind of changes like the way that you perceive like the whole asset, right? Because the thing that I like about the concept over here is that it's like, it's small, it's chunky, right? Whereas yours doesn't have that same feeling because it doesn't have the same proportions to it. So I would kind of try to like mimic those proportions like a little bit closer. And I would probably start there as well. And then the same for the screen, right? As you're doing the squishing process, instead of going for like a square screen, you kind of want to have like a 16:9 screen instead of just like a 1:1 screen, right? So I would say the first one up is definitely the difference in proportions, right? That's definitely the thing that I would start with first. And then the second thing that you can look at is also, especially if you can compare it to like the concept again, right? The concept feels like it kind of has that like rough around the edges concept art kind of feel to it, right? Where like everything is doesn't match up 100%. It kind of feels clunky, disconnected from each other somewhere. Like this, for example, this line that we have over here, that is not a straight line, right? So it kind of goes up and then comes back down onto itself. Which kind of just adds to like the chunky feel of the whole thing, right? So the second part that I would say is the modeling, right? Like paying attention to the details. That is definitely going to help with this as well. Because one of the things that is in the beginning very tricky to get away from is that very, very typical like 3D feel. And what that comes down to is that everything is kind of straight. Everything is like based on an axis, like, because that's the way that we model, right? We start from a cube, extrude a cube, all that kind of stuff. But we have to at some point go in and like bend things and squish them and like push and pull them to make them feel like more organic than just being the 3D cube that is like extruded, right? And that is definitely gonna result in like more geometry as well, which is fine because I mean you have like a whole bunch of geometry here, so might as well spend it on like other areas too, right? So attention to details, especially when it comes to the silhouette. Right? Silhouette is like the most important thing because that's something that we can read from a distance, right? The reason why you were probably gravitated towards this concept was probably first the silhouette because it kind of has like chunky kind of feel to it, right? Obviously, there's more to it. There's like the way that it's built up, but like the silhouette is something that's really important for something that we can read into, right? And then let's see, number 3. It kind of goes hand in hand here. It's kind of more that like attention to detail where like you have this like these like little scratches and little sculpted details that make a huge difference, which are not really apparent in like the texturing or in the asset itself, right? So we wanna drive more details. Once we've done step 1 and 2, then we want to drive like more texture detail on top of that good base, right? Because let's say we skip like 1 and 2, number 3 by itself can help us a little bit, but it's not gonna help us build a good foundation, and it's not gonna save this prop, right? Or like, well, save this prop, right? It's not going to get it to the point where you probably want it to be yourself, right? So we need to do step 1, 2, and 3 to then get like a solid, cohesive feeling model. So yeah, sculpting those details and doing some more with the textures, right? And the same thing with the modeling, the attention to detail kind of goes to stuff like this too, right? Where this, what is that? Like, oh my God, I'm getting all my hardware labels like mixed up. But this cable over here is not like 100% like in the slot, right? It kind of has like a little bit of an offset. And those details make a huge world of difference. Same for this cable, right? This cable kind of like curves around upon itself. It kind of has this nice curve. And this looks nice, right? So that looks awesome. And then you translate that into like the basic interpretation of that, right? It is tricky to get this looking good. The way that I would do this is I would probably put it on the spline first and just like extrude like this, or like array extrude, or whatever you want to do. You're basically extruding a mesh along a spline. Once you have it on the spline, it makes it like 1,000 times easier to then like twist it into itself and like manipulate it into however you want, right? Like Bilbo was saying, details. The details, they make a huge difference. You gotta give them some love. Yeah. But that kind of falls into like the details area, right? So again, start with number 1 by fixing the base proportions. I know this is painful, but this is in a weird tangent. Like, this is also the reason why I don't tend to go back to old projects myself, because I know that the foundations are probably wrong to some degree, right? I'd rather start from something from scratch that I can then build up like with the best intentions and the best foundations to then build on top of, right? Because right now, if you want to make this better, you kind of have to go back to like basics and then build it back up again, which is usually harder than starting from scratch. I'm not saying that you shouldn't take this on, but that is what you have to do to get it to look better than it currently does. So yeah, welcome back, Eloy. Let me read some of the other stuff that you wanted to say here, right? So it feels like the shapes are off, but I cannot point out where. Yeah, that's kind of like the stuff that we talked about, right? And I think the textures need to be tweaked, for sure. And then for the screen, I would like to put a video of a retro game playing and make the screen look retro as well, but I'm still figuring out how. So that's like the icing on the cake, right? You need to go back to basics first, make sure that all the other fundamental things are good, and then look into like a video at the end. If you wanted to do it in like, I don't know, Unreal Engine or whatever you're going to present it in, that's relatively easy to do, and it kind of plays really well with like Lumen too. So that's going to look cool in the end. But yeah, best of luck, Eloy. Looking forward to some next updates. Hello, McVal. Hope you're doing good. How are you doing? Let's see. Joe Bates is next. We had a talk about topology with Joe Bates last time around, but we didn't have topology images to look at, so now we do. All right. One of the things that I'm looking at, as like in a general sense, if we're looking at topology, is I try to look at dense areas from like a high, like a distant point of view, right? So, because I know those are probably going to be the areas where I can save a lot of time, right? So I want to focus on density first. The way that it's like really easy to focus on density, right? So let's say we focus on this screenshot in the middle. Density are the areas where like the wireframe almost becomes like purely white, right? So that's an area like this. Maybe some of the areas like here where it gets like pretty close to getting like almost white. And that to the same extent kind of like involves like all these shapes too, right? And then if we kind of do the same thing on like the bigger approach, let's say here, we can kind of see this area is almost fully white. There's like a lot of density here. There's also like a pretty, like there's a lot of density here, especially compared to this section, right? Which is like, you can make this shape. I know that the shape is different. Like this shape on top is like a little bit simpler, but the bottom shape, you can probably reduce like a lot of that stuff too. Like a lot of those areas. So I'll look at like the thing as a whole and then start comparing like areas, right? Because in general, like cylinders and like rounded shapes, they need a lot of topology to make sure that they look like they're rounded off, right? So I can get that. But if you kind of make this area pretty simple, like the main structure pretty simple, you can probably optimize the feed too. Some of this stuff, that is very organic. So this is gonna be like riskier or trickier to optimize. You would probably have to look at like the lengths of those like holders, right? You might be able to optimize those, or maybe look at like the denser areas of the candle holders themselves. But otherwise, usually organic stuff needs more density, right? So you're going to spend density on organics or like, yeah, just like organic shapes, right? Like with organics, I've kind of included like rounded and cylinders and all that kind of stuff in there too. The second thing, I kind of tease it already, is compare. Or maybe consistency. Because with comparison, what I'm doing is I'm trying to see if like certain areas that kind of look similar, if they have like a similar sort of density, right? So like we're looking for like relative consistency. You don't have to get this perfect, right? This is more for like if you really want to get like as much as you can out of like showing your wireframes, right? Because honestly, like this sort of stuff, if we were to compare this area again with this one up here, it's okay. Can you optimize? Yeah, for sure. But also like it's not gonna cause that many issues, right? So overall, looking pretty good. There's like certain areas, right? Like this area is really dense. I think there's something with like how many bevels that you have. And then comparing it again with like, oh, you only have like one bevel here. I'm thinking like, why do you need this many here if this is a bigger shape and you're using less bevels? Right? And then you can probably cut out like a bunch of these rings as well. Yeah. That's a little bit of an overview on like how to look at topology and how to optimize it. And I think the next question was like about like asset presentation, right? About this guy over here. Your assets are looking really nice. What I don't like is how you presented them, right? So you've made like this beautiful scene and then you basically strip it all out of that scene and you just make it into like a neutral scene to present your individual assets, right? I would not do that. I would see what you can cobble together with tilables or stuff that you have lying around. Change the floor, change the walls, and maybe do like very, very simple like details in the corners or maybe for the walls so that they don't distract, but it kind of feels like you're still in the same scene, right? Because like I'm looking for consistency, right? If you have like this beautiful scene presented and then you like scroll down and we see this on like a white background, it kind of takes me out of the fantasy of like, oh, I thought this was like a beautiful scene, and now you're just like, it kind of feels like you've been a little bit lazy by just putting it into like a corner in like an empty room, right? You can do these sort of presentations where it's more like a graphical presentation, right? Depends on like the limitations that you have in your scene. But I would probably look at using your environment first. And then secondly, go for like solid colors or gradients or something like that, right? But you kind of want to always like sell the fantasy of it being like, oh, this is in scene, right? So try to think about it more in that sort of way. And keep it consistent between like all the posts that you have. Let's see. I was wondering if anyone had any thoughts on how this could be improved. Yeah, I definitely like presenting it in scene. And then you also did some optimizations to the prop that we discussed before. And you pushed it down to 20K instead of 22. 22K of vertices, which is pretty good. You know, like you're going for like a high detailed look. You can definitely save a lot though. Like especially in these areas here, where again, doing the comparison, right? You have like very simple bevels here, but then you add like a lot of topology down here. You can easily reduce this, or like even like reduce it on the edges, right? So that you kind of have like more density on the top compared to at the bottom. You can definitely cut out like one of these, like what is it? Like skip one basically, and you can cut those out like easy. Because again, it's not like a major silhouette feature, right? So you can easily optimize them more. Yep. Looking good, Joe. Looking good. Rainy, can you make a brief list on what to take, on what you need to take into account when creating a 3D props environment to showcase your portfolio? If you want to know more about that, I have like, I don't know how many streams on portfolio reviews. They can help you out. I think I've definitely done more than 20 for sure. So yeah, go check those streams out. They're probably going to help you more than like just a quick list over here. Let's see. Nine Title is up next. I do appreciate the question though, Craney. It's a good question. Let's see. I'm doing a retexture and optimization for a game of this vehicle. But now it's just a color block, but some fixes, plus some fixes in the UVs. I've asked for permission, but I haven't received any reply. He published the painter files here. Cool. Please ask questions the next time, right? Because you're just throwing this in here, and I'm not sure what stage this is in. How close you are to the end. What you kind of want feedback on. It's kind of hard to tell how I can help. Yeah, I mean, you did say where it was, right? So it's just color blocking plus some fixes in the UVs. So if we're just talking about the color blocking, it's looking interesting. I would probably... I'm not a fan of the blue contrasting with the red. I would probably personally... It kind of depends on what you want to achieve with the look of this, right? Like if you go for like a very striking kind of setup, then I'm kind of thinking about like, oh, this is like a race car setup or something that needs to go quick and like catch the eye, all that kind of stuff. So think about how those colors are gonna influence what you want to say the vehicle is about, right? Because right now, like I said, with just striking colors, it's giving me race car vibes. Like race car as in like, oh, this needs to go quick, this is made for competition, like all that kind of stuff, right? Like I'm thinking about like NASCAR races where it's like those very bright, like striking colors. That's what I'm currently thinking about with this color scheme, right? So if that is not the intent, probably think about like a different color scheme. If that is the intent, I would probably say this might get down to like personal opinion, but I am not a fan of the blue currently, contrasting with the red. I think there are like more interesting color combinations that you can do than the one that you have currently. But yeah, color blocking is looking good otherwise. Like kind of everything makes sense. The rest of it is looking good. Yeah. Oh, probably we're gonna be picky. These guys are probably gonna be like rubber. Right? Those are probably not gonna be metal. They kind of look like hydraulic kind of arms. Or like cabling. Right, so you have like a couple of these like loose cables. It kind of can help you break up like how rough or like how dull a material is as well. It's like all these guys could be like rubber too. Or like some sort of plasticky material. Yeah. Cool stuff, Night Owl. Looking forward to more updates. I go to George. George is working on this cool little door. Bulborb is replying on a brief list of what you need to take into account when creating 3D props. Lighting, composition, storytelling, texturing, modeling. There's a lot. There is a lot. And it can go pretty deep, right? Because yeah, you're thinking about like, first of all, the stuff that you want to think about, right? But then there's all this adjacent stuff that you also need to take into account to then make the other stuff shine, right? So for example, lighting, you're probably not going to do that like ever as an environment artist, right? Because we have like special discipline that kind of takes care of that in AAA. You have to do that for your portfolio. You have to do like all the texturing, like, all the presentation stuff. Like it is very, very broad. It's kind of crazy the scope and the scale and the quality that you need to do things towards for your portfolio to then get into the industry. That is basically just gonna like take all these skills. Let's say, I don't know, let's put a random number on it. These 10 skills, and you're gonna focus on 2. It's kind of crazy. But that's just the way it is. Unless you're going into like more indie studios, then you get to pick more than those skills, right? Hello, this is George in the Discord. So as you can see, I'm being quite slow with this. I have very little time to work on it. Oh, don't worry about that. Like, it's better to make slow and steady progress than to like work in like sprints. So that is good. Micro environment overhaul. I tried to replicate the stoned wall, which would be typically be found in Florentine buildings. It's cool. So the door and the wall match quite well. Yeah. So we also got like a reference from like the actual stones here, which is cool. It's already already looking way more interesting than it was before, right? Like we're getting this door is part of like a world now, rather than just being a door that is just like off by itself, flying through space and time. you know? Now we're getting some actual like groundedness because this is a part of this world, which is cool. That is awesome. And then you've also done some improvements on the wall when building the microenvironment with Megascan assets. I noticed there was a lack of porosity. Let's see. Now it feels rougher and more integrated somehow. Yeah. First of all, this is looking really nice, right? Really, really nice. I think you can definitely do more in separating the door from the background itself, right? So what I'm thinking about is that now everything kind of meshes really well together. And I mean, meshes not as in like a 3D meshes, but like the consistency of everything, right? So everything kind of flows really nicely together. However, it kind of adds this like difficulty in like the distinguishing where the door begins and the wall ends, right? Like they kind of flow really well together. What I would do is think about ways how to separate the door silhouette from the actual wall itself. There's a couple of ways that you can do that. You can make like the wall lighter, you can make the door darker, you can do the opposite. You can do whatever you want, right? I would probably play around with this. Probably the first thing that I would personally do. Let me write this down. So separate the wall and the door. Probably the thing that I would personally do is I would see if I can do something with decals where I can add like sort of like a darker border around the door itself. And I'm almost thinking about it in a way where it's like it's dirt and grime buildup over the ages, right? So that's the way that I'm thinking about it. That could be pretty interesting to do. And then you can also like use the same decals to kind of have like a little bit of like build up between these surfaces as well. And we're just adding like an additional layer to the environment where I can imagine that someone kind of wants to keep the door itself clean, right? But then probably cares a little bit less about the wall that's behind it itself. So that's one thing that I would look into. These little bits with foliage are really nice. I would definitely play that up if you can. There's also this area. It kind of feels weird. Like normally you would have like the wall continue and then become part of the door frame somehow, right? Or like they would merge together. But now, because it just stops, it kind of just feels weird that it just does so, right? So try to find something for that little edge that you have there. Maybe it like curves inwards into the wall or something like that. I'm gonna let you do like your magic when it comes to it. Yeah, and then about the foliage, like pick a couple of places, like probably down here, where you can put like a pool of moss or something like that. And kind of have like almost like a miniature scene where like there's like a little bit growing like between the cracks and it like kind of spread out a little bit and you kind of have like a flower or something like that coming out of it. Just something interesting that could help there. And then also like I think we brought that up last time is I'm not sure if you've gotten to that yet or not, but I'm just going to make a note of it. it's tree shadows for the presentation itself, right? So what I mean by tree shadows is that I want to see like, I don't know, some like nice leaves kind of breaking up like this pretty even wall at this point in terms of lighting, right? So that we get like more dynamic feeling scene. Yeah, that's about it. Overall, really big fan of what you did. It like massively elevated compared to like where it was before. And especially where it was before you added the wall just by itself, right? Um, you really You're really taking it up to the next level. So this is looking really good, George. Keep it up, man. With that, we're moving on to the next one, which is Swan. Hello, Swan. Hello, Mike P. Bodhi saying, yeah, the door looks so realistic and nice. Yeah, it does. It looks really, really. I have never been able to just focus on like one asset to this sort of degree. So there's like, I could do it, right? I could execute on it, but I just don't have the patience to do it because I'm always like, oh, I can make this one door, or I could make like part of the city. I just prefer doing like the city part rather than focusing on one door. But it's always so cool seeing them come together and like really people like, it feels like they're honing their craft with just like this one thing that's happening. And it's looking really cool. Yeah. Don't mind the message at the end. I'm here now. Okay. Oh, could you leave me towards the end again? Oh, yeah, I kind of do these like in a random basis, or like semi-random, because I don't really look at like the Discord up until I'm streaming, right? So, yeah, let's have a look. So, hello Tim, hope you're well. I wanted to resubmit for Whip Wednesday and get some further feedback. Oh, I added these two, but they're technically not for Whip Wednesday, I think. That's all good. So I hope with the updates that I've made, there's more clarity in the story that I'm trying to convey. You don't have to show those 2 extra pics, which, yeah, they're on there now. But I'll leave them for you as extra concept of what will become a large slab and what the next chest, oh, what the new chest, sorry, what the new chest will draw influence from. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. I like where this is going then. So we kind of went for like an Egyptian team then, right? With like hieroglyphics, all that kind of stuff. That is cool. That is cool. Background silhouette looks interesting. Excited to see how this turns out. Yeah, exactly. I kind of like how the chest is like kind of slanted backwards so that we can't really see in it. But then you have like this large slab at the back of it. Like I'm probably, I don't know if that's a slab or if that's going to be like a piece of a wall or something like that. That is like a nice way of like capturing the highlight that's coming from the chest itself, which is pretty cool. So I do really like that. Let's see. Yeah, so overall looking really good. Way more of a fan of what's happening now. And also like the lighting feels like way more contained. I'm not too sure about like these little guys over here just yet. I'm not gonna say like that you should do anything with them now, but it kind of feels like there's some more that we can do with this guy over here now. But we'll see. Yeah, it's more out of like curiosity. That I'm just curious to see what you're gonna do with these like blue lights. I like the balance and like the way that you contrasted to see now. But I'm unsure about those blue lights at this point. I was a bit unsure about those smaller lights as well. Yeah. Yeah. But that's fine, right? I'm also not sure on what to do with them immediately, but sometimes this is exactly what we kind of need to be aware of, right? Is that, okay, I know that there's something wrong with that. I can't put my finger on it. So I'm just gonna do the rest of the scene and just like incrementally change stuff. And at some point it's gonna be like, oh, I see where this is going now, and I can just remove those blue lights and replace them with something else, right? So that's all fine. You'll figure it out as you go along. Yeah. These two are nice. I would love to see more destruction in the scene where, like, for example, this cap is like partially off, right? And then also, oh, because this could look so good. Like if you have like this tablet, but it's like part of a wall still. And then you can do like, I don't know, the tablet goes down here and then it kind of goes off this way. Then you can still do like all your like writing on it too, right? But like making it more feel like it's making it feel more destroyed. Right? But like in general, the block out and all the stuff that you have is looking really good. So that's awesome. Yeah. I like it. I like the direction that you have going. I like the story that you've built for it. I like the theme that you've picked. So good job, Swan. Good job. Nothing more to say from it on my end. Let's see if you have any more questions. I don't think so, right? No. It's looking good, man. Looking good. Keep it up. And just, yeah, keep those things that you feel, right? Like keep those like gut checks. Like keep those in mind. Be wary of them. And if you can act on them, like do so. But if it's kind of like in that weird like nebulous phase where it's like, I don't know what to do with them yet, you don't have to act on them. Most of the time that stuff is gonna like self-resolve if you're like keep your head in the game. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Swan. Paula Maria is back. Before we dive into your work, Paula Maria, which is it's been a while since I've seen your name, so welcome back. Oh, did you post that? I know. Oh, yeah, because I can remember the scene. I'm not sure if I saw it posted. I'm just generally wondering if I've seen it. Because I have no clue anymore. In the meantime, Mike P is saying, I'd like to join the team challenge, but I have a limited free time. Would it be a good idea? I specialize in crafting props and materials with Substance Designer. What is limited time? So when you sign up, well, like we ask you to put in like the amount of time that you can dedicate like on a weekly basis. I think what we look for at the minimum is 10 hours a week. If you can manage that, you're good. If you can't reliably, then I wouldn't recommend the team challenge. Alexander is also asking a question about the team challenge. Yeah, feel free to ask those questions, by the way. That's awesome. So will everyone who subscribed be able to participate, or will there be a selection? There will be a selection. So once we have everyone that's participating, well, basically applying, what we then do is we have a selection process based on a number of factors, not factions. And then we build teams based on those factors. So yeah. I think not everyone that just subscribes gets in. Because there is a selection process. Just also because we want to keep like what we aim for. Game art factions. Well, we're kind of setting that up with the team challenges anyway. But oh, what was I gonna say? Yeah, what we want to do with the selection process is we aim for a group of people that is around the stage where they can are pretty close to getting a job, or are a professional themselves, right? I mean, people that are professionals, have participated before, all those kind of people will get in for sure. Well, might get in. It kind of depends on a bunch of factors. But yeah, we don't want people that are like pretty new in your journey to enter in a team challenge, because that's not going to be to the benefit of them. You think you can manage that, Mike? Sounds good. Would you review my breakdown? No, this is a review for people that are part for our community. So I'm not sure if you are a part or not, Rohan. What is the process to participate in the selection? You just sign up. As soon as you sign up, there's like a whole bunch of questions. You answer them all, and then you get added to the pool that we have. And then as soon as the signups close tomorrow, we will then gather the team and basically go through all the applications and make sure that everyone is notified about when they need to join. So the current timeline is that on Friday we will send out like the emails to everyone. Following up on what you said about the number of people who applied, are you considering making the teams larger this time around instead of 5 per team? No, it's gonna remain the same. So 5 per team. 5 is like a really manageable number. We've had teams of 6 at a certain point. But I think 6 is on the border, and anything above that just like becomes untenable to kind of keep track of everyone, even within a team, right? I think 5 is a good number. What we are going to stress, as we always try to do, is that you work towards the scope of the people that will participate. Because the way that I've always looked at it is that it's never an issue of how many people you have or how much time you have within a team. It's always a scope issue. There's people that as a team decide to go like crazy and they make like big stuff. But if that is your decision, you then also need to be aware that you're going to have to put in like way more time than other people will do. So it's like, that's one part, right? Like, what is the scope of our scene? Like, how much time do we have to dedicate? Do you have a team where a lot of people are working full time? Then it's probably better to go for a smaller scoped scene and go for higher quality instead. But yeah, we will hopefully, well, I will hopefully hammer that home on the kickoff, as I always try to do. Let's see. Maria is saying, one is old, one is new. Let's see. Yeah, because I can remember... Oh. It was based on... Was it based on like... how to appreciate feedback on the farmers' towers fields? Yeah. We're gonna dive into it in just a second. Here we go. So we're gonna dive into it in just a second. I was just wondering if you ever finished the what were those tribes that were living on the water or like close to the water, and they had like these really cool looking huts? Or am I just like completely misremembering who that was? So I think that was you. Let's have a look. To limit the time before university submission, I decided to work on the multiple iterations. Now planning for the final iteration. Nice. Let's see. Here are some elements I created for the scene. Modular set. So we got that here. We got the materials, the kimchi pots, the trees. Then I plan to replace and refine the following updates. The following elements. Replace the current rice plants with custom made ones. Rework the tower textures. Add more dirt and details to the foreground path. I appreciate some feedback on the overall scene, especially on which elements need to be improved to enhance the composition. And then inputs on optimizing and improving the visual appeal of the rice fields. Okay, so cool. Let's have a look. And then you added... No, it's lost. Sorry for that. I will make sure to ask more feedback in the future. That's all good. We'll make it work. I'm just gonna have a quick peek at like the original post. Oh, that's this guy over here. Is it? No, it's not. It's really close though. It's kind of hard to tell. Right, because this is the original. So if we just put them like, I don't know. That's pretty crazy. That is like, yeah. In the last comment, there's a comparison. Yeah. Yeah, so we kind of have the same thing going on here, right? Where like you have like the concept up top and then the 3D at the bottom, which is really nice. The thing that I would love to see, I know that this is not part of the concept, but I want to see some mountains in the background. And you can kind of have like a lot of atmospheric depth, where what I'm thinking is... Not as big. Right, something, and I'm really talking about like a very subtle like background shape to just like... Because it is nice, but I also don't like that it just abruptly ends after that last tower. I kind of want to sell like that the world just keeps going, right? So some background mountains would be pretty interesting to see. Yeah, it is really close. Really similar. That's the thing, right? Like, it kind of becomes a question of what do you as an artist want to improve on top of the concept, right? Like, this is also going to be like a thing where even in the industry, like you can execute upon a concept, but if you then are able to take it like to the next level by being like, hey, look, for gameplay reasons I need to do this, or for art reasons I want to do this, like that is also a good thing to showcase, right? So I would definitely have like some background mountains. You can maybe play with like the fog and like the distance and all that kind of stuff. That would be cool. One thing that I would also play with is, especially on these foreground shapes, a little bit more of depth of field. Because you kind of have a little bit already. Maybe that's okay. I'm a big sucker for depth of field though. So that is more like a personal thing. For the rice fields, oh, I like how you separated like some of these towers from the background by adding like a little bit of fog next to it. So cool. Really well done. For the rice fields, I would just go in, and if you've set this up with like the foliage painting tool or whatever, I would go in and do like a random scale, and I'll set that scale to like oh, Very important. Like you reapply settings instead of like having to paint it all. You go into the reapply settings tab, and then you set the scale setting to like 1.2 to like 0.8, and then you just paint in some like height variation to like kind of break it up a little bit more. Because I can see that you kind of have a little bit going on, but you can definitely push that a little bit more as well. Maybe try. So a little bit more scale variation. So for the rice fields, I'm not sure if you have this already, but what I like to do is I'll add this little node here called the speed tree color variation node. And what that allows you to do is, I think you have to plug it into base color, and it will add like a per instance like variation, where if you just like overlay that in like a very subtle way, it creates like a little bit of a difference between like all of the little bits of foliage that you have in your scene. You gotta put that like really, you make it really subtle because it goes crazy really quick. But that can kind of help you like push a little bit more variation between like the individual rice fields as well. What could also be cool if you're looking for an excuse to add more visual variation in the rice fields as well, is maybe think about like how people would work on those fields too, right? Because I know that in between rice fields, you usually have like what we have here, right? Like these dirt tracks that allow you to go in between like the rice fields. What if, I have to be very careful with this. What if you add one here very subtly, and then just have like, I don't know, like someone with a cart or something like that, so that we're selling this idea like, oh, this is actually, people are actually working the fields as we speak, right? And then have like a cart with like a bunch of rice just like stacked on top of it. And then maybe we can use that cart like in the back as well, just to give the idea of like, oh, people are working the fields and they're like driving this cart around, like gathering all their stuff. And it also helps with a sense of scale too, where like this person, awesome. But if we can then use like repetition in the same way, where like this person is not only in the foreground, we can also like add this person here, and then maybe add this person here. Like we can then be like, oh shit, like these towers are like really big, right? Because that repetition is going to help us convey that sense of scale, especially in combination with like the towers. Could be something to play around with. And I think since you already have a trim sheet of wood, right? You can just make like a quick cart out of wood, because you're not going to put it in the foreground anyway. So you can just like quickly bash one together, see if it works. If it works or not, we tried it, right? It also doesn't have to be a cart. I think you could do something more interesting than a cart as well. I know that, I don't know what they do with rice specifically, but sometimes they'll have these backpacks, right? So if you just make like a quick backpack and you have like a character that stands off in the distance and they have like a backpack with like a bunch of like rice that's stacked on top of their back, like that could be like enough of a visual, right? And again, it doesn't have to look good because we're just looking at it in the distance anyway. Atmospherics would help give the scene some depth. I actually like how the atmospherics are done in this scene currently. I think the only thing that I don't like is that it kind of just ends at this tower and that's it, right? Like that's the end of like the atmosphere. Like I kind of want to be able to give the sense that there's like more behind that as well. Maybe what could work, maybe to your credit, Shazar, like maybe we could try and play around with like localized fog. Like in the fields. Just very subtle, right? So that you almost have like the morning hours. You have like this dew kind of residue in the morning. It kind of like rises up, all that kind of stuff. Good work with like some local fog. Like I said, all the stuff that we talked about is more about just the details of it, right? Sharpen the dream sheet details. Input on optimizing and improving the visual appeal of the rice fields would be pretty helpful. Yeah, I wish I had that page on grass that I did. Because actually it's pretty interesting what you can do with just like clumping stuff together and spreading it out more. Again, with like the reapply settings, right? Where you just do like the scale variation, that helps a lot. And then you can also do the same thing with the density as well. So you can like cut out a couple of sections of rice that look like less dense and then have like denser patches of rice. And that's honestly all you're gonna need. Like you're gonna have a lot of variation by just doing those like two things. So yeah. Best of luck, Paula Maria. This is looking freaking awesome though. Jeez. This is a killer scene to have on your portfolio. What I would be somewhat careful with is having a character so close up. Because the character, in contrast to the rest of the scene, it doesn't live up to like the same quality bar. I think you could use it in like the distance, but I don't think it works for up close. So, I don't know. Something to think about. But yeah, you can do a lot with this character still though. Like you can have like a couple of these characters like just standing in the field and you just make material instances. You change the color of their clothing so they look like different people, scale them up and down just a little bit, maybe remove the hat just like really quickly. And then you've got like a completely different person that you can kind of use to sell the idea that like people are working the field, right? Yeah. There's a lot of fun stuff that you can do at this point. So cool. Yeah. Maybe it's just like this screenshot that I'm looking at. To be fair, you don't have it in your latest render, so maybe you thought the same thing as well. Yeah, it's looking nice though. Looking real nice. It's an awesome scene. Good choice of concept as well. Thank you. No worries. No worries. Awesome. Yeah, best of luck on that. I mean, it's final touches really, but the scene looks fucking fantastic. And for people that are new, sorry for my swearing. I just get so excited. Let's see. Next one up, we have Moonlight. Moonlight is working on a stylized little candle holder. It's looking really cute. And the question is, this is my latest render for Unreal. What do you think about the lights and the glass shader? So we have swearing I will never recover from this. I'm sorry. Please forgive me, McFall. Have a seat. Okay. So, first thing that I can see here is that the brightest spot of the image is here, right? So this is currently pretty distracting. The same can also be said about here, because I'm not really... like, stuff starts to blend together a little bit much, which is usually an indication that, like, your light is probably turned up too high. Because some of the values are, like, merging. So the values are merging together. Overall, I do like how it looks. If we balance them out a little bit more, like, this is gonna look real nice. Then onto the look of the glass itself. It is looking nice. Glass is always horrendous. First, what I would do is add a little bit more geo, right? Like, make it look nice and smooth. My little lantern, yeah. And then this is where it gets tricky, right? Because you want to get closer to the stylized look of the lantern that you're trying to replicate. You can do that in so many ways. I think it might be worth to experiment. Let me bring up the concept as well. Doo-doo-doo. Stylized look, yes. Yeah, this is what stylized comes down, right? It's all about the look. And getting that look to translate from, like, 2D to 3D is oftentimes the hardest part about it. What I could see from here is that I would probably go for a less intense Fresnel. A less intense Fresnel, so that the Fresnel doesn't go, like, all the way to the edge. Doesn't go all the way to the edge, but kind of goes, like, more up until here. Right, so you kind of want to push that Fresnel effect a little bit back. To get that double-sided feel, I would probably try with 2 meshes instead. And this is something that you asked me about last time, right? And it was more about, like, I don't know. It kind of depends on the look. I think if you want to replicate this look, I would try, like, 1 mesh, the one that you have currently, with, like, a little bit of a shader adjustment, and then shrink that mesh down until you can kind of fake that the look of the second mesh, or, like, the second inner mesh, with a... That was a bit chaotic with the shader, but let's experiment again. Yeah, so this is the difficulty of working with any sort of transparency. If you... oh, what's it called again? If you're working with dense translucent objects, the engine kind of has to do this, like, extra calculation of deciding, like, okay, I have transparency or translucency, but the engine itself, or, like, Unreal Engine and the way that it renders things, doesn't really know how to distinguish, like, an area that's before, like, another area, right? So it doesn't read, like, the depth accurately most of the time, which is why you're probably ending up with those, like, artifacts, because it's showing, like, a face in the back in front of the face in the front of it, which is weird. It kind of breaks the whole feel. There is a tick box for this. Usually this is called, like, alpha sorting, right? So, like, Alpha sorting just means that like the engine knows like where something is going to be based on the distance of it, right? Especially when it comes to alpha or like translucent or opacity objects. There is a simple tick box in your asset that is called vertex sorting or something like that. And that is literally a tick box that is gonna make your asset look way better using like two layers of glass on top of each other. That is something to look out for. Yeah, like this is what it comes down to, right? Like, the shader I found deals with the front and back translucent, the roughness as well, but it is projected on a simple mesh. Oh, usually like the more complex the mesh becomes, like the more difficult it becomes, right? Oh, found something about vertex sorting you told me about last week, but I can't remember. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is honestly what it comes down to. Like stylized, if you wanna do like this sort of stuff, especially when it comes to translucent materials are horrendous to work with. It's honestly the reason why you don't see a lot of translucent materials in games, even up until this point. Because there's so much trickery and fakery and all that kind of stuff that needs to go into it just to make it look good. Plus, on top of all of that, it's really expensive because of it. But yeah, this does look... What could you do? I like to experiment with it, the shader thing. Yeah. What you could do... play around with the normals of the mesh. Okay, this is gonna get sort of confusing. I'll try to explain my best, right? So the inner mesh here, we've got mesh number 1, which is like the inner mesh, and then we got mesh number 2, which is on the outside. There is a trick which is oftentimes used to create like a cell shaded effect on top of your meshes, which is you have this like outer mesh number 2, and you flip the normals, and you make it like single-sided, right? So technically, whenever you're looking at something like it, then you're only seeing like the outside edges of it, because it's not going to render what's in front of it here, because you're literally looking at the back face, right? So it's not going to render it. A little bit different with translucent materials, but yeah, you could try that. Then it's like a very interesting technique of creating like an outline around your object is just taking the object, like scaling it up just a little bit and flipping the normals and just slapping like a black material on it, and then you have like an outline around like your mesh. Not recommended. You would do that in the shader instead of like duplicating your mesh, but it works. Okay, best of luck, Moonlight. Best of luck with the shader experimentations. I would like to create my own HDRI map to control reflections, but I don't know how. Yeah, I'm sure there's like tutorials for that. You could also experiment with rectangular lights though, because now you have your surface set up and you have like a base HDRI. So now you could technically have like a rectangular light to kind of fake those effects too, and kind of get those like nice chunky like reflections. There's a lot of things that you can fake. For example, you could use like a rectangular light to create like that nice nice reflection that you have on like the side of your light, but then don't have it affect like the actual lighting in your scene. You could do that as well. Yo, let's see. Yo, here we go. You can, yeah, this is basically game dev 101. Like, you can fake a lot of things because that's all the stuff we do. It's just figuring out how, right? That's usually the hardest part. Okay, we've got this awesome looking gun from Tio. This is looking nice. Let's see. I'll try to have as many feedbacks as I can. Any feedback would be appreciated. Let's see. First thing I'll say, may not be time for that yet, but think about your presentation. What I mean with that is that this looks cool on a black background, but you're running into issues where, like, if you, I know that you have a rim light, but like there's still like issues with the object, kind of like merging with the background, right? You've done a good job like trying to accentuate like all of it with a rim light, right? And for the most part, it works well. I think these renders that you have here could work really well for like your breakdowns, right? Or like your clean renders or something like that. But what I would love to see is something with more context, right? What is going to be your main render? And what context or environment are we going to find this in? Usually, like, we do this by like grabbing a bunch of Megascan stuff and presenting it like that, right? But I would love to see more about like what kind of world this is found in, like what kind of state this is found in. Is this like a collector's item? Is this like being used currently? You can do a lot more when it comes to the world building. When it comes to that, right? So that would be really interesting to see. These materials look really nice, like from like a stylized level, like a level of stylization, right? Where it's kind of giving me like Dishonored kind of vibes. It's sort of like on the edge, and it's mostly also with the shapes of the gun as well, right? Like they're like a little bit more flamboyant and like a little bit more elegant, like not what you would necessarily see on like a current day gun, or like a gun, I don't know, that was made in like the 1800s or something like that, right? It's kind of giving me some like alternate universe vibes, which is really cool. What I'll say about some areas is that maybe a little bit more subtlety, especially here and here, right? I like what you're doing with it. It's just a little bit more subtle. Especially with those layers. Like you kind of want to make him... First screenshot with context as always. Nice. That sounds good. Yeah, you kind of have to watch out for like these very harsh transitions, especially when you don't have them like in any place else, right? Like maybe contextually that could make sense, where like you have like a lot of scratches and stuff here. Yeah. What could be interesting to think about is You see. Doing like these details, right? And with details, I'm talking about like if you're gonna do a render like this, which is looking freaking nice, right? Looks awesome. Just lifting up like these corners just slightly. Maybe this corner here as well. Right? And then maybe some areas where you kind of feel like the wrinkles are just like they're actually affecting the mesh. Right? Especially in this highly detailed area. That's gonna look so good. Right? It's small stuff. It really is. But that is gonna make it. And it's very nitpicky, very small stuff, but yeah. That's the thing, right? Like if you want to do like these detailed shots, like those details, yeah, you're putting like a magnifier onto it, right? And if you're doing that, then I kind of want to be like, okay, cool, but like do those little things. You're gonna be good. Yeah. Not too much more to add though. This is looking freaking awesome. You need to work a bit more on this part of the gun. Yeah, I think more subtlety in general on the texturing, right? Where if you want to bring out the layering and just really go through it with like a fine-tuned comb and just be like, okay, there's like a little rust buildup here. That rust, probably someone tried to fix it with like a little bit of oil. That oil is going to be like soaked into the metal. Like that's all going to be like all those like fine layers on top of each other. Right? Again, especially because you're doing such like high detailed, like focused on those areas, like kind of renders, right? Yeah. Because the majority already looks good, right? You got an awesome foundation to work on. I mean, foundation. Like it's literally the last 5%, right? That's what we're talking about here. Last 5% to really sell it. Let's see, what does the concept do here? Cool. Thanks a lot. I'll add a bit more details on the metal and put some new wares on the leather. Yeah. So he's coming in and saying that the gun looks amazing. Yeah. It looks awesome. PPOs is saying, hi Tim, reply when you can, or after this feedback section, I have a few queries. Yeah. Free to ask them. Drop them in the chat. Really appreciate it. No worries. Thank you for showcasing your work, Tio. This is looking awesome. Let's see. Will is up next. And Will is on the screen already. First question. How many pieces of art should a junior or 2 to 3 year experienced environment artist have in their portfolio in order to apply to a better studio or a higher position? Number doesn't matter. Quality is all that matters. It's an age-old thing where like you can have one freaking kick-ass environment and get that job, or you can have 10 mediocre things and not get that job. So it's always about quality. Usually my recommendation is like 2 to 3 really high quality ones that allow you to showcase like your skills, maybe showcase that you can do like different things as well, right? So they don't all have to be like big environments. You can have like a single asset, you can do a diorama, and then maybe focus on like a bigger environment, right? that would build like a well-rounded portfolio. And if you can do them to like the same quality standard or like a really high quality, you're in a good position. But like, yeah, the amount of it doesn't matter. And what other criteria are there than portfolio to succeed in the hiring process beside a strong portfolio? You have to be a nice person first and then have a strong portfolio. Like, the portfolio is the thing that's gonna get you in the running for the position, right? But the nice personality and the willingness to learn and the openness to other people and the team spirit, like, that is most of the times what is gonna get you to stay. Because if you have a really good portfolio but you're hard to work with, no one's gonna want to do that, right? So yeah, I would say that once you have a really good portfolio, then the hardest thing is just like getting your foot in the door, especially as a newcomer into like the studios, right? That's honestly like the hardest part. But once you're in and you have a good portfolio, and then you're like a good person on top of it, like, yeah, I think you're good. There are like other things that you can do to help that for sure, right? Because there's only so much you can do when it comes to applying online and like just watching for the newest positions. Obviously, you don't want to make that your full-time job. Like, it's better to just like spend 10 to 20% of your time looking for jobs, and then after that, you're probably up to date, and then you just do more work, right? Also, there's potentially, depending on where you live, there's other opportunities to get in contact with other people that are in the industry or maybe want to get in the industry as well. Study groups in school, get-togethers, conferences, like all those kind of things. Like, they can be nice to kind of make use of, right? But you don't really need to see them as networking. It's more about like, I genuinely want to meet up with people that want to do the same thing as I do, and if I then get to like stay in touch with them, that's good. I would kind of not see it as networking, because that usually means that people are just like, they have too much stakes into the whole thing, right? They have this like thing that they want to get out of the conversation, where as soon as I feel that, like, I'm already like, okay, like, I'll help you for sure, but we're not going to build a relationship, right? You recommend writing personal letters for every application if you want to increase your chances? Yes. The way that I did it is I would have like a standardized cover letter, but I would have like one paragraph that I would change based on the company. That's the way that I would do it. But yeah, cover letters, I don't know. I've never had to read one, right? To be fair, I've only worked at companies that don't have them in their like interview process, where I was a part of it, right? So I'm not too sure, but I just don't like it. That's like a general thing. Thanks, man, for the reply. I'm a regular viewer of your Whip Wednesday. Hey, that's awesome. Yeah, I hope that helped. If you want to ask like more questions, feel free to do so. It's a nice break in the formula too. Let's see. Dear company, I love playing insert game, please hire. So one of the recent things that I've heard is that you kind of want to let them know more of the things that they can't really read upon your CV, right? Which makes sense. But the way that I was doing it when I was a student is that I kind of thought that it was like an extension of your CV. But from what I've heard is that they kind of want to get to know you a little bit deeper, like a little bit more of your background, how you get to do art, like what inspires you, what makes you stand out, where you want to go, like all those kind of things kind of condensed into like a short written thing. But yeah, I mean, I'm not too sure about that. Like we have like a whole bunch of like resources on our website. And honestly, like the cover section part, like is still the part that is just like, I don't really know, you know? Like, it's very hard for me. So yeah, I understand the frustration. Let's see. Let's have a look at Will's work then. I've been having a hard time understanding the composition of the scene, especially with asset placement. It still feels quite empty to me. There are a few supporting assets in progress, but when it comes to deciding what assets to create and how to place them in the scene, what should we be focusing on? Well, it kind of depends on what you're like the most frustrated with, right? Because there's a whole bunch more that you can kind of get out of what is currently already in the scene, right? And so you have this section over here. You have like a bunch of junk on the floor. Right, but the floor in your case feels like pretty clean. And there's also like no variation in it currently, right? It feels flat. So what you could try is do like a planar reflection. And then do like more roughness on the floor. So that it becomes shinier, right? And then dress it up with more assets that kind of break up that shiny surface, right? Because you do have assets here, but they kind of blend in with the surface now. And then you can just have like a bunch of like pieces like scattered on the floor. And honestly, it's just small stuff. Right? Like little cigarette butts, like little things that are dropped on the floor, like those, what are they called? Like beer cards, you know, like ripped off beer cards, like stuff like that. It's just like ground clutter. Spilled alcohol. Well, this is the thing, like what I'm trying to do in my head is I'm thinking about like, okay, I have a shiny bottom surface, so I'm gonna break that up with less shiny stuff on top of it, right? You could potentially do that with spilled alcohol as well, but then we're making it shinier, which could work, right? That could work. But it's again, you kind of need to balance because we don't want to pull too much attention to the floor by making it like super shiny, right? But you could play around with that. That's a good suggestion. So that's mainly it. Like you got to think about the surfaces in like all the same ways where it's like, what surface do you think like is annoying you the most? And then just find like little things to kind of just like dress them up and like break them up a little bit. For example, having like a little section here where you have like a decal on this edge that kind of breaks up the border. Hey, thanks Hudson. Appreciate it. It was about time. I've literally, I kid you not, I did this like an hour before stream. Like it was kind of unplanned. So I still need to get used to it myself as well. But yeah, it was about time. So back to this, we could have the same look at like the ceiling as well, right? I think you did a great job having like these kind of breakups, but oftentimes it's more the subtle stuff that kind of helps us a lot, right? And what I mean with subtle stuff is you have, for example, like reflections over here, but those reflections are not broken up by like what you would assume to be like dividers between the panels, right? So what I would do is I would just model an actual ridge in the geometry. This is obviously bigger than it needs to be, right? But like push that geometry out and give it like a little ridge to kind of break up those highlights and also make the ceiling like more interesting than it currently is by just being a tileable, right? Then you can also do the same thing by just like cutting into the geometry again and just opening these little cuts. It doesn't have to be a full tile all the time, right? You can cut in like little bits and pieces, or even have like certain areas. Like I would take like a soft select brush, like, you know, I would probably select like a vertex here and kind of pull it down a little bit so that we kind of get like a little sag in like the whole roof, right? So we can kind of do like all these like very subtle things to kind of make it feel like it's more organic than it currently is, right? So what did we say? So using the tileable more effectively, like pushing it with geo, right? Like adding more geometry to the whole thing. And then, yeah, maybe a soft selection, right? Just to kind of break it up, because what this literally comes down to is we have like a lot of straightness, like a lot of straight lines, right? And as soon as we add like a little bit of soft selection, like it kind of breaks it up. Very subtle stuff. But I can honestly like help a lot. So for example, on this big surface that is like straight, I break it up just a little bit, right? Maybe even only the edge, but it's gonna be a weird question, but what is the brush? What is the brush that I'm currently using? Let's actually have a look. I think it's just like a random bit of texture, and then I just have like a dynamic brush on top of it. I think it was included when I bought like Affinity. A brush for your hair. Well, no longer gonna need that. Well, I might need like a beard brush now. Planar reflection? Yeah, they can be helpful in certain situations. No, not using Photoshop. It's the BE brush. Hell yeah, like what you did there, Swan. Yeah, so that's what I would think about. It's with this kind of a scene, it's more about the subtle things, right? It's more about the subtle layering, like the decals, like maybe doing like little bits and bobs here, just like adding little bits of variation. Yeah. And you can basically apply what we did with like these surfaces to like any other surface too, right? You have these straight like lines at the bar, break them up, you know, like this little metal lip, just have it like a little bit crooked, a little bit wonky. And then, yeah, with this sort of stuff, just having like a bunch of stuff that's scattered on the floor. Like you're already doing, right? But I think it's just not showing off because we don't have the contrast between the two. But yeah, thanks, Will, and best of luck. McFal's up next. Oh, we are on a roll here. Going from like right to right one. I'm an interior architecture student, but I'm gonna learn environment art for games, so I just saw your channel and it looks chill. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much, Tala. And best of luck in your architecture studies. That's gonna actually help you a lot when you're gonna do like environment art. Like I kind of wish that I kind of did something architecture related, but I was kind of like a late bloomer when it came to like taking my own like academic career seriously. Let's call it that way. Okay, so for feedback, I was wondering how to improve the cracks, and they feel a little bit dull. I am gonna... It's kind of hard to tell. But I think you have to look at your normals first. Because are they flipped? Because the reason why I say that is because you kind of seem to have like a light coming down at an angle somewhat. But your highlights are at the bottoms of your tiles. So you might be dealing with like flip normals on this one. And it also... It also feels like slightly metallic as well. It is weird. There's something weird going on with like the way that it feels. Forgot to remove the highlights in the base color for the Unreal Engine render. Okay, there's still something wrong. Like it reads wrong though, the material. So flipping the normals or like the metallic feel, you would probably want to investigate those as well. Let's see. Let's see. On both Designer and Unreal. Yeah. So for the flip normals, you would check how you're exporting them, because you oh, Bodhi, you have to go. Oh, thanks for being here, Bodhi. Sorry that I couldn't get to you. Maybe next time what we'll do is we'll call out people that are in the chat and we'll do them first. How does that sound? But thanks for being here, Bodhi. Flip normal reference. What I was saying about the flip normals, you have to check what format you're exporting in. So it's usually DirectX or OpenGL, and it depends on if the green channel is flipped or not. So OpenGL is used in Unity, DirectX is used in Unreal, and that's gonna make your materials look like completely different. The other thing is, yeah, whether it feels metallic or not. That just like comes down to like if you're using a metallic map or not, because we're kind of getting like some colored reflections. I'll have a look tomorrow in school. Yeah, sounds good. Like that's the reason why I'm saying that like your texture kind of looks weird, because there might be metallic values in here, which is the way that you can usually tell is because like you're gonna get colored reflections from your lights. So that would be the first few things that I would check out. Now, onto the actual question that you asked is the cracks, right? I wanted them to be kind of shiny like the reference. No, metallic is something that you don't use on like non-metallic surfaces because it's just going to look completely weird. Like, do not use metallic. If you wanna have things look kind of shiny like in the reference, that is something that you do in the roughness instead. Very important to keep that distinction between the two. You will, because we are working with like a PBR pipeline, right? Which stands for physically based rendering. So as soon as you start to play around with like things that are like weird, like infusing metal into tiles, they're gonna look completely wrong. So instead, work with the roughness and just play around with the roughness. Just try to boost that up as well. Not only the textures have an influence on that, but also the environment that you put them into. If you kind of want to have those like the reflectivity on these kind of tiles, right? What you could actually try is try with like a planar reflection and just like have like a plane that gives you like a lot of reflections going back, right? Because it is the shininess of a material is not only how you render your textures, but also you gotta give it something to reflect as well, right? So that's why I'm saying like, oh, take like a planar reflection, because that's gonna make sure that something is gonna be reflected. I mean, you don't have to. You could just like stick with like the normal reflections, but yeah, gotta give it something. So yeah, note that down a little bit, right? To make it clear. So So shiny materials come from roughness. Yeah, because so the thing is with, even if you want to make the shininess of your material like come out more, the metallic value is not going to have an influence on that at all. Because what a metallic value does is that it's going to change like how your reflections are going to be well, colored or not, right? That's what I was saying before. Like if you are putting like metallic in your values, that's why your reflection right now, or like your light, is kind of being reflected with color in mind, and that makes it look off as well. So if you want something shiny, material, like your roughness is the way to go. 100%. And then, yeah, your environment too. Right? You gotta give it something to reflect. And that's how you get shiny materials. For example, in here, like this area is also like way lighter. Compared to your environment too, right? And that's also gonna help with like the whole thing. Didn't know that, thanks. I'll use roughness then. Yeah, no worries. It is just really important with PBR. Because this pipeline is kind of like very strict when it comes to that. Cool. On to the cracks. When it comes to the cracks themselves, I think you've got them scattered in like a nice way, right? So like the amount of panels that it's kind of touching is kind of cool. You just need to vary them up a little bit more so that they actually look like cracks, because right now you just have like the straight ones, but you kind of want to have like a bit more variety in them, right? And you can do that with like a directional warp and just like warp like whatever you use as like an input for the cracks and just like warp it until you get it. Yeah, Simon is for PBR, so I should probably fix that. Yeah. If it is for PBR, you got to make sure that this is like correct. My gripe with Designer is that a lot of the times the render can come out looking different when importing to Unreal Engine. Is there not a familiar method to get closer to like in Painter? I think by default it's already set to aces, I think. I think so. I think they updated that where it's like set to default to aces. I think it just depends on like your reflections that you're using, right? Like the environment that you're biasing it from. Most of the references I found for cracked tiles were almost straight. Yeah, it just kind of looks weird, right? Do we have like cracks in here somewhere? Don't think so. Cracks and scratches and stuff. Let's see. Let's have a look at the chat. At a studio I previously worked for, the ground rule was that metallic is either 0 or 1, never in between. Yeah, this is like the eternal battle between technical art and environment art, right? Or like art in general. Well, like as an artist, there are sometimes really good use cases where you kind of want to go in between metallic values. But also from a technical art perspective, I can get why they insist on like either 0 or 1, never in between. Yeah. Thanks, McFell. Yeah, I feel like that is honestly like the longest ongoing discussion in game studios at this point. Ever since PBR came out. Ugh. For example, metallic paint. Yeah, or if you have dirt on top of metal, right? Like let's say I have like a dusty metal plate, or I have like a dirty metal plate. Like, what do you do? Is it 1 or 0? Because dust doesn't make the underlying metal layer invisible, right? You can still see the metal, but it definitely changes it, right? It changes the properties of the metal. So do you go 0 or 1? And that's where artists are mostly like, nah, we can go in between. Yeah, the longest discussion is exactly this one. Just whether or not to have non 0 or 1 values in your metallic map. Oh, yeah, I see what you mean, Ola. Base materials either 0 or 1, but then you layer other properties on top, such as dirt. Yeah, that's a good way to say it. Yeah, but yeah. The artistic part in the process too, it's a tough one. Yeah, also like what might happen is that you work in one company that says like, oh, these are the rules, and then you go to another company and they say like, oh, no, the rules are different here. So you get that on top of it as well, right? Kind of like you're mentioning too. It's okay, right? Especially if you want a certain shininess into it. Yeah, but if you're working in the studio and like, look, for personal projects, like this conversation doesn't matter, right? It's more for like having discussions with like different disciplines within a game studio. And packing all that info into 2 textures. Oh yeah, that I mean, yeah, that gets even closer to like what people want to do. Let's see. Don't know if everyone saw the post, but I do all that was pointed out except the HRI, which I'll try. Thanks for the fix. Thanks for the tips. Oh, sorry. Let's see. Sorry for bursting in here, replying a lot. No, that's fine. I found your stream at the top of YouTube as a suggestion and found it interesting. Are you a teacher, artist at a studio? I'm kind of weirdly enough both, right? So I run Beyond Extent, which is like kind of turned into like a community where I try to teach like other environment artists. And I'm currently a senior environment artist at Playground Games, working on Fable. So I've been in the industry for it's kind of weird. Like I would say 8 years, but like 2 years of that was like doing the stuff that I'm doing now, right? But I decided to like dip back into the industry. So yes, I've been doing this for quite a while now. Both things actually. I think I've been doing Beyond Extent for like 5 years, and then professional work for 8. Well, yeah, 8. Mostly in video and film, then as a generalist in CG animation studio, and now I teach the craft at a vocational school. That is awesome. Always love to meet like other people that are like giving back to the community, right? And like teaching the craft. That is awesome. Flex. No, this is just what I do. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Sorry, Justin, it's not your time yet. Well, let's see. I think we have Zoe in the chat as well. Do we have Alexander in the chat? Alexander, no. Oh my god, I'm gonna butcher this. Alexander Noachi? Oh my god. In the meantime, we'll probably move on to like Zoe then. We're gonna have a look. Because Zoe is next in line anyway. Basically, I'm a legend. No. I don't want you to take that away. I'm just like a normal person, just in a specific industry. Trying to give back to the community. That's all I am. Nothing more, nothing less. Let's have a look, Zoe. No, I think it's good to reinforce that, you know, because sometimes people like they kind of feel like there's a barrier between us and them, but it's like, no, I was in your position like 8 years ago, like 10 years ago, right? It's just like, yeah, it's like it's a normal part. Let's see. Zoe, sorry, I haven't updated this post in a while. I was very overwhelmed at first, and it took me a really long time to wrap my head around making tidable textures and modular assets. I think I'm starting to get there now, but here's my progress. I mean, it is a really, really big project, right? Which is kind of what I said before, right, Zoe? Is that this as like a first project is like enormous. So it is normal to be overwhelmed. If you want to get a tip, right? If you want to get a tip, try to focus on a single element first. Like for example, this water well. You're gonna have to make that at some point. So isolate that first. Right? That would be a tip. If you're already overwhelmed at this early stage, might start that tomorrow. That's a good shout. Like, try to focus on the single asset first. I'm gonna give you like a couple of common traps, right? So the first trap is that you want to make an environment, and I'm saying this because I've walked into the same traps as well. But you want to make an environment, but you underestimate the scope and the scale of it too, right? So that is kind of what's happening here. And we're just in the starting blocks, right? You just started. But to make this look really good, like you're gonna have to work for weeks. And I'm thoroughly underestimating this, like weeks, if not months on this, right? Because there's a couple of things happening at the same time. It's like you are trying to make the art as best as you can, but what is also happening at the same time is that you're learning a bunch of skills too, right? So as that is happening, you're picking up all these new skills, and then like a third trap comes up as well, is that right now you've done this wall, right? But let's say we're talking about like, let's say 2 months down the line, right? You finish all the rest of the textures, it's highly likely that you would want to get back to this wall because now it looks bad in comparison to how much you've grown over time, right? Very common thing. And now you're on this treadmill of like, oh, now this looks good, but I'm unhappy about this, so I'm just gonna like redo all of it. That is completely normal, right? That is a complete normal part of it. It's something that you can completely avoid by just making your projects way smaller and like trying to isolate them before they can kind of get into that position where it kind of feels like a treadmill, right? So that's why isolating it to like a single prop like this, making it look really good, and then potentially coming back to like this environment could be the way to go. But I would love to see you like make this complete. Like completely make this first before you then try to make like a whole environment. And I'm so sorry to kind of stomp on like your ambition, right? I get where that comes from. I really do. I was always like that too. I just want you to avoid the traps that like cost me. I kid you not. I think I have like 250 gigs of like, no, not 250 gigs. That's overestimated. I think I have like 90 gigs of projects that I never finished because of those pitfalls. Like I kind of want to just like help you avoid that, right? And also I'm going to give you like a bonus thing as well. Is that no one really cares that much about the scope and the scale of it, rather than how well you executed a single thing of it, right? Because like you're saying, should I do the prop with foliage and everything? You could do, But I think if this is like your first time doing like an actual prop, because again, I have no context here, right? I would honestly focus on the prop first and then maybe do like another project that can help you focus on doing foliage, right? So the way that I would see this is you kind of want to isolate your skills. So the way that I look at this is like, okay, so we now know that like for an environment like this, I need to have like I need to be able to make like a high to low poly asset. I'm gonna shorten this down a little bit, right? So we're gonna cut it up into pieces. So a high to low poly asset. Cool. That's number one. I want to have foliage. That's number two. Cool. I want to become really good at making tileable textures in Substance Designer. Skill number three. Let's see. Probably trim sheets in there as well. So let's say number four. Trim sheets. Number five. There might be some sculpting work in here too. There's going to be some modular stuff in there as well. These kind of go hand in hand, like modularity. And then also, what you're also learning is like all the adjacent skills too, right? So, number six, let's say lighting. Number seven, presentation. And all the meantime, you're getting better at molding as well. The reason why I'm laying this out is I want you to isolate your skills and then be like, okay, with this project, what am I going to work on, right? So we're just doing a single prop as your high to low poly. You're already going to learn so many skills. So do that first. Cool. If you then feel like, I kind of want to take my next skill to the next level, maybe tileables, right? Like making tileables. Could be like a good way to isolate the next thing that you want to do. And then just keep moving on to the things that kind of interest you or you think you need to boost up in order to complete like your little checklist in order to become or to make like your first environment, right? So yeah. Thank you so much for talking about the scope of project. I struggled with that as well, and what you said was really helpful. Oh, no worries, Carolina. Like, I've been there as well. It's, yeah, it can, like, there's like a fourth thing that happens as well, is that if you do enough of these, like, unfinished projects, it really starts to demotivate you, right? So you're like in this treadmill, but like nothing's ever getting done. And you're just like, oh my God, why am I doing this? You know, and it demotivates and demotivates and blah, blah, blah. It's worse and worse. So you got to give yourself wins as well. Like this is not only to help you skill up your own skill set, but you got to be able to do it in a consistent manner over a longer period of time, right? That's what I'm trying to focus on at the same time as well, is that if you have a project that takes you like, let's say a month, that allows you to just be like, okay, this month I'm going to focus on this. It's going to be done, post it on portfolio, moving on, right? And that's going to be way more fulfilling than having to work on something for like, I don't know, let's say 3 to 6 months or something like that, that you just end up on this treadmill. So yeah, isolate your skills and then just like pick them apart one by one. How do you choose a smaller scope? I get confused because I see people with massive environments and I really want to do that. Oh, I get it. Like I was all for doing bigger environments, right? If you want to do big environments, an easy way to kind of scope down on bigger environments is like try to reduce the amount of stuff that you need to be able to do, right? So for example, in this environment, as an example, right? If you wanted to do something of smaller scope, cutting out all the foliage would already help a lot because then you don't need to learn like a whole new skill set to be able to do foliage, right? That's one thing that you could do to reduce the scope of this environment. Hudson is asking, in this piece, what should you focus on to keep it small scaled? I would honestly just focus on the most important thing here, like the water well, for example. Execute on that first, and then build up on it, right? Like one concept that I kind of keep talking about as well is the concept of save points, right? We're going to gamify this a little bit. And with save points, I mean, you want to build something that still contributes to the bigger picture, but allows you to then also be like, hey, this is my save point. I'm just going to ditch the rest of it. If you just make this single asset, you make it look really good, you can post that on your portfolio, and like no one's even going to know that like that this was a part of like a bigger project, right? So that's like a save point that you build for yourself. Shazar is saying the same thing. If you want to make something big, look for concepts that are full of modular elements and repeating. You can do a lot of really cool stuff with like minimal resources. Like I'll showcase like the scene that I'm working on. Well, I guess was working on. I don't even know what state is in right now. But you can do something that's like really complex with like minimal amount of input if you work smart and not hard, right? So for example, if you pick like a random screenshot here, and some of you have seen this, right? Like this is part of like a bigger city. Like the reason why I'm able to build something of this scale is because like everything is built with like a single material. Right, so all the stuff that's made out of wood, I'm just using the same sort of texture and trim sheet for, right? And then the way that I use that trim sheet kind of dictates like what I can build with it, right? And then obviously the engine kind of allows me to like add variation and make it more unique and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, you can see that that kind of gives you like a lot of flexibility in what you want to do, right? Because relative in the amount of time that is invested in this scene, it's relatively low if you get to work on this like focused, right? Because all we're looking at here, all the stuff, like all these assets, like that's all just like tidables, right? Tidables, and then you can add like layers on top of it too. But it's like with big environments, you want to work smart, not hard. I would advise you to go back to like smaller environments, yeah. And then come back as you're more experienced, right? The curve that I would say is you want to work on individual props for a little bit and hone your skills, right? So we're gonna focus on the rise of Zoe as an artist, right? So this is where you want to be. Like I want to be able to make my own environments. What you're gonna have to do in the beginning is just do like props, right? Individual props, things that you like. At a certain point, you can start doing a diorama, which is a really small scene, mostly consistent of those props, because now at this point you kind of know what you're doing when it comes to those props. Let me clean that up here. So you want to get comfortable with those props until you can then add those to your diorama. And then once you're like comfortable with your diorama, because this is probably where you're going to be picking up like modularity, trim sheets, all those kind of things. Once you've done a couple of these potentially, then you can move up to like where you want to be. Right? To like your first fuller environment. Right? And that's like we're building like a step-by-step plan of just like increasing your skill set over time, right? By first focusing on the small stuff, making sure that you're really comfortable with that and like knowing Like you're really comfortable with baking things down, and then going to like using that in trim sheets and using that in tidable textures and all that kind of stuff. It takes time before you can build like your own environments, but you'll get there for sure. You will get there, and if we can help with any of that, like, yeah, let us know. I would start with like this water well. I think that's a fun little asset for you to make. Relatively simple in shapes, but you're gonna learn a lot when it comes to baking and texturing and all that kind of stuff. Oh, Zoe, I know. I'm also really impatient too. So I know where you're coming from. So, yeah. Best of luck, Zoe. Francisco. Oh, I forgot to add you to the list. Did I? Oh, shit. Tomb Raider, nice. Yeah. I think I forgot to add Francisco. Let's have a look. Let's see. Were there any questions in the chat? Looking at your website, the team challenge looks really fun. Yeah. No, you're still in here. You're still in here, Alexander. I was I think I was calling you out before, seeing if you were here or not. But yeah. Let's dive into your work now. The main idea is to express my relocation from my hometown to a place that I don't particularly enjoy. Let's have a look. This is just a block out. I love to receive feedback on the composition, level design, and storytelling. Even feedback on the lighting as well. Oh, Shazar, will you have more substance designer workshops? Yeah, for sure. We just had the one with Javier Perez. We are looking to vary it up a little bit, but we will have one for sure. Before we dive into your work, Alexander, let's see. Opus is asking, is it a good idea to take a break or a gap for your career for at least 1 year, upgrading the skill set? If it's hard to focus on career and skills upgrading together due to other private issues? I would... that's a tricky question. I mean, they're private issues, but like, I would love to know those private issues. Because I'm always a believer. I mean, look, I don't want to get into it, right? Because I'm always a believer that you can do more than you let yourself on, right? I'm sure that there might be something else going on too, but I would not drop out of the industry to like just focus on my own stuff, because that is really tricky to potentially get back into. Or yeah, it could be really tricky to get back into the industry, right? Especially in this day and age. Yeah, so I would not recommend it. I would try to just find like little bits of time here and there, like just do little things. God, can you please share the UVs of those pillars? Oh, the pillars? UVs are killing me? Oh, sorry to hear that. Big walls, tileable modular walls. I feel like, oh, okay. I think maybe you're having issues with like, if you're thinking about like tileable or big walls, you don't have to restrict yourself with like staying inside of like the UV bounds, right? With big walls, like you're usually working with a tileable texture, and the only thing that you need to keep in mind is like that you scale it up so that it makes sense for your resolution. Let's keep it simple. So it should be relatively easy for like big walls if you're working with a tileable texture. There's no way that you can, for like really big things, that you can make like a unique texture and make it look good. So at that point, you kind of need to look into like other techniques that are suitable for bigger surfaces. Okay. Very big scene. Brave. It is a big scene. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you were here for the last discussion, but that might be very pertinent to your skill set as well. I'm not sure what your skill set is, right? But like this is a very, very ambitious scene. Good night, you. Let's see. So in terms of composition, so we kind of want to focus on like the thing in the back, right? So this is going to be like our focal point. But what you're going to run into is that there's a lot of stuff leading here. So there's currently like a little bit of a conflict between the two. Whereas like what is pretty smart if you look at your concept over here, right, is that you have like this sea of people for sure, but like a very, very smart play with lights, right? So this big thing in the back, obviously that's the first thing we're going to look at for sure. So this is focal point number 1 for sure. But it's pulling the attention in by being so massive and being detailed, right? It's like a unique thing. Then once we let our eyes wander, like we're probably going to be looking at this section over here because we got like little spots of light that are kind of like leading you up to focal point number 2. So we got to be very careful with how we dissect this scene because it's very purposefully built, right? If we then look back at like what you're trying to do is that this is fully lit. So this is going to be number 1 for sure. And this is still going to be number 2, but you're playing with like a different set of variables that you're working with, right? One thing to be very conscious of is that this artist has a lot of detail at the bottom. And it's interesting where this artist is very purposeful about where to use detail in comparison to very simple shapes. So this artist wanted to make the simple stuff stand out compared to the detailed shapes. Right? So it's weird because normally we do it the other way, but it kind of works, right? Just depending on how you balance it. So like he added like a sea of people down here because it's just like noise and we don't really see it. Right? Where we want, in this scene, we're focusing on like the larger surfaces that are like easy. I'm doing all of this to kind of give you an idea of what the artist did in the original concept that you might be able to translate into your composition as well. So it's not directly like, say, giving you like feedback on your composition, but those are the things that this artist was very deliberate about when constructing a scene like they did. Right? I would potentially look at simplifying this to a single focal point. And one a good tip for that is if we take like the whole frame and we divide it up into like roughly 3 sections, right? Where you want stuff to be is around these areas, roughly, right? I would think about that. So use the rule of thirds. Right? So use the rule of thirds to construct where you want people to look, and then support that with additional elements. Right? In terms of composition, what could be also really cool is if you have this path going down here. We kind of see that go off, or like at least have an idea that it will eventually lead to like this bridge over here, right? Like maybe opening it up a little bit more. So yeah, that's what I would say on the composition. Yeah, the storytelling, it kind of feels like more what you're going into is more of like pilgrimage. Versus mass, right? But this feels like this is like a massive congregation of like one religion almost coming together, right? That's kind of what it feels like. Where what you're gonna do is more like a pilgrimage to like this holy site. So maybe think about what supports that, right? Because now it feels like a massive city, but maybe shrinking it down to just like the icon itself and not having to do like the city on the sides would actually be more interesting, right? That you focus all your effort on like the main focal point, and maybe you could have like, I don't know, like a waterfall coming down or something like that underneath it. So we're trying to like tie up the storytelling while also like condensing the scenes, that it's not like this giant scene that you have to do. I know this was a little bit all over the place, but I hope it was helpful. Let's keep it on moving on. Francisco, I don't have you in my list for some reason. I make a template for you? I don't think so. Caps, but it will do. I'm making the asset in Houdini since I need a lot of wall variations. I can't UV map them manually in Maya. Interesting. I make strips like UVs, but it only gets good quality if I use like... You can stack UV strips on top of each other, yeah. Yeah, tile textures and trims are your friend, for sure. For stuff like that, 100%. Hey, Francisco, let's have a look. I haven't made a huge process, and I know there's a lot of projects to review. Just 5-10 minutes of feedback. Just to know if I'm headed in the right direction. Next steps include specific feedback requests. Let's have a look. What are your thoughts on the building on the left? Does it seem too classy compared to the rest of the scene? Oh, sorry, I got the wrong screenshot. Let's get this one in here. Yeah, it does feel a little bit too classy, just because you got like the arched The arched windows, right? There's like a little bit of a style clash going on. Especially compared to like all the rest, which is just square. You kind of have these arches, but those are more like, I don't know, like walkway arches and stuff, right? But like the arches for these windows, like I would not expect them to be, yeah, rounded or curved. Let's see. Does it seem too classic compared to the rest of the scene? Any feedback is appreciated. Yeah. That's what I would say. Like they kind of just clashed in the style currently. So, yeah. It's you kind of want to keep them in like that very Victorian slum kind of feeling, right? I think some straight windows or semi arches would work better with the scene. Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. Yeah. I was worried about. Yeah, you kind of want to try to keep everything like sort of consistent, right? I know that you were looking at the order. Keep that in mind. Like try to see like how consistent they keep the buildings and stuff. Probably there's like a shit ton of good reference out there for it. So I was thinking about using PGZ, BDG. I think are you talking about PCG or PGG? Because I have no clue what PGG stands for. You get variation on each instance, so it looks handmade, and also variations on polygon level 2. It's kind of crazy that you need that sort of like variation though. Because I mean, you could have like variations, right? Like you could like build like separate modules and like cobble modules together as well, which would still only leave you with like, I don't know, like a library. Oh, dependency graph. Okay, yeah, I've got no clue about that, but I've never used it myself. Well, like any sort of like procedural system, I'm not too sure why I would need like endless variation. I mean, yeah. Depends on the project though. Because usually you only need like a set of like, I don't know, 20 variations that are like modular in some way where you can like bash them together and all that kind of stuff to kind of have like a very elaborate like setup, right? Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? I don't know the use case. Untitled is saying hi. Hello, Untitled. Welcome, welcome. Yeah. Thanks, let's go. Again, not a huge project this week, but next week, Wednesday, will be full of cool updates. Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for sharing it. Last tree of today. Would be nice to get some feedback on my trees and foliage. Are the trees too dense? So are the trees too dense? Should I make smaller plants with more interesting, with more geo? I get some white edges when zoomed in on my smaller foliage. Oh, you're talking about these guys. Is that just because you don't? I think you added your texture here, right? So I think that might be an issue with just like texture bleed. Right, where you kind of want to add like more dilation to your textures to make sure that once you crop around it, or you have to deal with like mip mapping, that you don't like show just like the neutral background color, right? So in general, what you want to do is fill your background of any sheet of foliage, even if you're gonna apply like opacity on top of it, you want to have like the base color of the entire thing just be green. Or a representative color of the foliage that you're making, right? That could be like the only thing that I can think about. Or other, I don't know. But it's only showing up on these guys though. These leaves have it too. Kind of hard to tell. Another thing that you could look into is on the texture settings. Look into your mip map. This is in the engine. That can help you a lot as well. This is crucial for foliage too. And then let's have a look. Are the trees too dense? I'm not sure what you're talking about. Because you're not seeing them. Right? On like this image. Appreciate the comments and help. Oh, yeah. I mean, I wasn't too much of help, but appreciate everyone in the comments helping out Rashia. So, best of luck. You got this. So yeah, for example, the trees here, they look really dense. For sure, especially if you can see them in like a field full of trees. This is gonna be way too dense. For sure. Even this guy, you kind of want to leave like interesting bits where you kind of have it to a certain degree. You kind of want to make it sparse in certain areas so that you can see through it, have like a little bit of overlap. But this one is too dense for sure. The one on the right. But again, in the scene itself, you don't really see it. So it doesn't matter. It's only for your breakdown, right? And then should I make the smaller plants more interesting with more geo? I don't think you need to do too much with like the smaller plants necessarily. You just need to work on like how you group them, because it kind of feels like really patchy at the moment. And that kind of has to do with, first of all, how you set up like your assets itself, but also how they blend with the texture underneath them. Right, so what you kind of have is you always have these islands, right? You kind of always have these like little islands. What I tried to do when I was scattering like a lot of foliage is I would break away from having circles to something that is like a bit more interesting. Right, so you kind of want to make like more organic patches so that once they start overlapping, you get like more interesting overlaps and more like interesting stuff to happen once they like blend together, right? And then together with like better blending with like the base terrain, all that kind of stuff, gonna work. So yeah, nice looking scene, Bodhi, coming along swimmingly. Yeah, keep it up. But I just realized what the time is, so kind of speeding things up a little bit. We got Justin over here. Let's see. I wanted to get feedback on my second pass on this doorway. Okay. Cool. So it's guy is not relevant. Yeah, I like how that feels. What I especially like about this is that we're getting like a better read of the actual asset, right? Like you could even push out a little bit further if you wanted to, where like you simplify the areas that don't have details in them. Right? Because now what I like is that we can actually start reading like, oh, this is like an area with details versus like an area that has like no details. Ran back from the kitchen. So the same thing is happening here as well, even though like it's starting to get like a little bit more intense again. Is that it's fine to keep like areas like this just like completely blank almost, right? So that we get like a little bit of space to breathe, which is also a thing that can be applied to like, again, your whole scene, right? But I like the way that this is reading. I really do. I feel like the same can be said in like the roughness variation, right? Where again, we simplify this section and then we increase the roughness variation on the parts that matter, right? So kind of want rest versus detail. So it's fine for like all those details, but like really work with that information you have and like really make it shine, or like, well, not shine literally, but have like more variation, right? Compared to an area that is like designed to be like on the up, right? Because then what we're doing deliberately is we're trying to guide people towards like areas that have detail. And in this case, it's a doorway, right? So you want people to look at that because it's a place of transition, progression, like all that kind of sense. Yeah. Yeah, like it. Big fan of it. I think again, the texturing can use a little bit of work, right? Just in terms of like the rest versus detail, right? But it looks nice. Right, to keep that in mind though. Right, to keep that in mind. So for example, all the stuff in here, like I would treat that as like rest. Just keep it like really simple. Like you could almost just have it as like a blank wall with just like, I don't know, a pillar here. This is all blank, just like barely any detail on it. And then like a little, I don't know, little pillar guy over here or something. But we kind of want to be able to like guide people from like place to place by using detail or no detail, right? Like that variation between the two is something that we can use to our advantage a lot. But yeah, I love it, man. Looks good. Let's see. Also wanted to get a feedback on my approach as I'm using both trim and unique texture as well as basic modeling and sculpting. Is it an ideal workflow in terms of studio production? And if not, what would be better in approach to terms of fidelity? I think that's totally fine. Like I'm assuming. Let's see. Oh, I'm assuming that like the bottom here is trim and then the stuff up here is like more sculpted and modeled, right? That works beautifully. Like that's where you get like the combination of the two workflows and you just let them shine in their own right? So yeah, that's beautiful, right? And again, like you can kind of use that again to like distinguish them in like rest for the trims potentially, so you have like less detail or it becomes like more repetitive detail so it doesn't stand out. And then you have like the unique detail that you've like put your time and effort into. So yeah, I think that's an awesome approach, man. Like this is probably exactly how it's done in the industry as well. Like if I was to construct like a location like this, yeah, that's probably the way that I would go about it too. That's looking good. Yeah. Awesome job, Justin. This is great. Well, I was saying the same thing. That's a perfect use. The trims can be used in multiple areas while you have unique textures required in specific models. The trims can be used in multiple places. Yeah, exactly. You got versatility and uniqueness like hand in hand on this one, which is nice. Yeah, great stuff, Justin. Looking forward to the next update, buddy. Oh wait, did I read everything? I chose this approach as it felt like a good way to make this particular piece stand out to its surroundings. Yeah, that's 100% correct, man. Like, that's the way to do it, right? Like, if you want to make something stand out in like a scene of trims, like that's one way to do it. And that's awesome. Adam is working on Yard of the Lost. I'm struggling a bit on how to sell the scale of the environment. It feels a bit too small in comparison to my refs. Like, any tips are much appreciated. Thanks. Oh, a couple of my main refs. Well, I think the main issue here is that we don't really have like anything to compare to, right? So scale, it comes from comparison in a lot of cases, right? And that comparison could be like really broad. One thing is to do like you do, add a little character in here. But if like in the blockout stage, like all the shapes are like really hard to read, especially in like a natural environment, right? Because I can guarantee you, if you start adding like, oh, look at this, there's like a little boat here. You know, if we start doing that, now this feels fucking enormous, right? This is huge. Because we kind of know what like a boat is looking like, right? Especially if we make it like one with like triple sails and all that kind of stuff. Like, we know that this is freaking huge now because we got something to like compare it with. So try to look for things that you can add in your environment to compare it with, right? Like to kind of give like a sense of scale. In your case, there's going to be multiple opportunities, right? First of all, once you start texturing like the lateral surfaces, like just the scale and the size of like the cliffs, for example, that's going to help a lot with conveying the sense of scale. It's just kind of hard to read in the blockout stage, right? Where just everything is just cubes. So if you want to give that a try, you could honestly do like a very quick like kit bash rock and use that to sort of give you like a better sense of scale. Or look for more opportunities to kind of give like these characters like scale comparisons, like a way to naturally be embedded into the environment, right? Let's see. Anything on your refs that we can use? I mean, there's obviously some boats here. For example, what we could do is you're gonna have a foreground here, right? I'm expecting there to be like some like rocks and all that kind of stuff in here. Once you start adding those in, that's also gonna help with just the scale itself. Especially again, if we then like start using them in like a couple of areas, right? Because now we get like a pretty good idea of like, oh, this is how big this is. And then if I see it repeated somewhere else, I can then like start to compare the two distances between the two and sort of get like a better sense of the scale. So yeah, it's a pretty quick one. And I'm gonna let you decide what you're gonna use, right? But you can basically achieve like a sense of scale with both natural and like human-made objects. It's just a little bit easier with doing it with like very stereotypical shapes, like so just add more for scale. It's not necessarily more, it's picking what, right? That's what it comes down to. Because just adding more might make it like overwhelming and you don't want to add like too much either. But like just picking something that is like really easy for us to understand as people, to then be able to compare to, right? If you're doing like a scene of exploration, just having like a boat, like that will give you like all the sense of scale that you need. But yeah, if you don't want to do that, you'll have to kind of work around with like having like repetition with like different stones and maybe give us something to relate to there. Exactly, Ola. Exactly. Okay. Yeah. I know not directly helpful in terms of like assets that you can add to it, but hopefully in terms of like what to do, I kind of hopefully helped you a little bit. And with that, we are done for today. Still 25 people watching. As always, I appreciate it. It was another long session, so I'm not going to make it any longer than it needs to be. I'm just going to say, appreciate you all for being here. Appreciate all the people that posted their work as well. It's amazing to see everyone's updates. We've got like so many like really cool stuff in the works. It is freaking amazing. And yeah, with that said, if you want to become a member, get your work feedback on a weekly basis, you can join with the link down below. And yeah, I thank everyone for being so active today as well. It was nice to see the chat today. So, oh, thank you, Gaio. Thank Carolina. And it's got to say, and have a good evening, everyone. Yeah, you too, Scott. Let's see, Ola, like if you make a boat, things that could help sell the scale is people and oars. A boat can be anything. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would definitely help. All right, people. Take care. Have a good evening, and we'll see you later. Bye. Oh, stick around for sure. Thanks, Ola, for making the time to do so.